what you're supposed to do. Take your pictures. Smile. Ha ha ha. Thank you all for coming today. It's really nice to have Angel Jur in her class and my 601 class and a good audience for the continuing week of Angel Dominguez's Maza Writer in Residency. So Angel over here has been visiting with students in classroom settings, both online and in person. Yesterday, he sat down with whoever came in and wanted to share their work and talked with them and gave feedback and suggestions for publishing. I was listening in sometimes, and it was really nice. And part of this residency, this is the 7th time we've done this. We started back in 2017. And but the Sam Maza Foundation funds this residency each semester, and so we'll have a writer in residence every semester. So watch out for next spring. There will be somebody new. We don't know who that will be yet coming up. And everything that happens at the Poetry Center here gets recorded, goes into our online archive. So if you go to the Poetry Center website, you'll see there's a link to the archive, And within the individual events, there's typically a link for those that have happened already that'll lead you to the videos that have taken place for the other events that we've done. And we do about 30 events a year, something like that, on campus and off campus. On Saturday, Angel will be with Ronaldo Wilson, who's a stunning poet and performance artist, photographer, visual artist, teacher, scholar. Ronaldo lives down in Santa Cruz and teaches at UC Santa Cruz. And these two are close friends. They've known each other since Angel was Ronaldo's student. And back some years ago at UC Santa Cruz. And so we, the Poetry Center, are really delighted to be able to, both thank the Sam Mazza Foundation, and Ann Geltjur is one of their people. So thank you, Ann. And so last year, they let us know that the Mazza Foundation is going to be giving us this money for 10 years. So we'll be able to have a writer in residence every semester for the coming 10 years, which is really fantastic and a great show of trust. And so we're going to do good things with it. And today, Angel Dominguez is reading with Hannah Kezema. And Hannah's going to read first. And Hannah works in multiple mediums. I know my students have been looking at, if you go to the Poetry Center website, you can find a link to her SoundCloud page and hear the amazing songwriting and vocal performance, just really beautiful. So check that out. She's the author of the chapbook 3, which came out in 2017, and her works in multiple literary places: Black Sun Lit, Grimoire, New Life Quarterly, Full Stop, Spiral Orb, and other places. She has a book that was just announced that will be published in a coming season by Case File. The book is called Case Files. The publisher is called Game Over Books. Cool. So in 2018, she was the Artelis resident of the Intertext program. And maybe we can ask her about that at the question and answer. After the poets read, we always sit and talk with them. And she's currently the co-editor of Moving Parts Press's Broadside series, examples of which are on the table here, and for sale, and of Latinx and Chicanx poetry. And that's a collaboration with printer Felicia Rice and Angel Dominguez. And Felicia's press is called Moving Parts. And yeah, go to SoundCloud, listen to Hannah. Welcome her today. Hannah Kezema.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, everybody. I'm very nervous. This is my first pandemic reading, so bear with me. It's a whole new world. Thank you so much for having me. This is my first time at the Poetry Center. This is kind of a dream being here in this space. It's, wow, so many books. And I'm so honored to be here in accordance with Angel Dominguez's residence as a longtime fan of Angel's work. We met in grad school, and so to see them evolve in this way is really magical and exciting. And I wouldn't want to read with anybody else, frankly. So can you guys all hear me okay? I feel like I'm a little short. So I'm going to be reading from Case Files today, as Steve said, and now I can finally say it's going to be coming out through Game Over Books in 2023. It's my first full length. I'm very excited. And this was a project that I began in 2018 or 2019, and is a collection of poems based on my experience working in the insurance fraud industry, which is not something I ever thought that I would be doing. But here I am 5 or so years later. I actually started as an editor, just editing reports in the statements department. So things people say, witnesses, people who file claims, people who sue other people, that kind of a thing. And then somehow down the line, I found myself in the field as an investigator, and that happened to overlap with the pandemic, which was a really interesting time to be a field investigator. And so these poems are my experience both as a newbie editor and as an investigator in the field. And so without further ado, first poem, Find the Fraud. Insurance fraud is a crime of specific intent. The alleged loss must be proven valid. Fraudulent claims cost the U.S. billions of dollars every year. Compensability for insurance claims is determined by numerous factors. In other words, ask as many questions as it takes to find the lie. Everyone is guilty until proven innocent. Reports from a room. Before the field, I'd edit reports for cases regurgitated from all over California at my kitchen table. The cases were often mundane, unearthed from misunderstanding, false optimism, and shame. But the truth is, I like the way people talk. For years, I listened intently, neatly parceling conversations. I was taught not to believe most of what I'd heard. What I've learned is many of us don't answer questions directly. Our nerves get the best of our language. It's so hard to remember anything. What did you eat for breakfast the day before yesterday? It's so hard to lie well after 30 minutes. And sometimes the mouth will start talking and you must steer it somewhere else. Or you don't remember what exactly you said to her or which foot you landed on first. Sometimes you lose sight of the pattern, but I was never interested in fiction. The factory worker. She would always complain, and sometimes the complaints were warranted, sometimes not. She complained about her boss, about the substitute supervisor, who told her to close her eyes at the assembly line. She closed her eyes at the assembly line, and he kissed her on the mouth. But the controller, who is a man, could not understand why she would close her eyes when the machines are running. The machines are running, and she couldn't say why, and they couldn't fire him because he knew the job inside and out. They couldn't fire him because he was one of the best ones. The carpenter. A soft, slow-spoken claimant. I couldn't foresee his anger. He reminds me of my mother's boyfriend, soft, slow-spoken, carpenter, deer hunter, lost all feeling in his arms, his legs, his toes, his fingers, his spinal cord, bruising from repetitive motion. He glued panels a good 25 years. Find the fraud. In California, recording anyone without their consent is a crime. In California, an ABC test is conducted to ensure the legislation's definition of an employee is met. Workers' compensation is one of the most common forms of fraud. Only in California can you file a workers' compensation claim for stress. The workers' compensation doctors of California must prescribe evidence-based treatment. Some claimants will only receive medical treatment for their injuries. California is said to be the most litigious state. Arbitration is a last resort. Anonymous. I will never forget her erasure, that dark night walking across the main road. Anonymous was ageless in that way that names become numbers, numbers become paper. With headphones and a hood, a life that walks without the promise of warmth. We can only speculate why she didn't hear the truck, or why the driver didn't see her. Harriet the Spy was one of my all-time favorite movies as a child. I too had a small private notepad with scribbled notes about my family. When Harriet was drenched in blue paint, I was reassured even spies have bullies. At one point, I was convinced I was adopted and launched a full-scale investigation with my first grade friend, a professed witch. I wanted so desperately a dumbwaiter to hide in. All I had was New England. The roofer. The man, he fell through the skylight when no one was watching, landed on his back on concrete, contusion to the head, death impact. It was months before the toxicology report revealed the blood thick with lethal doses of methamphetamine and cocaine, fresh in the system. The winery was not held liable, but this man, he had a wife who mourned. How are you guys feeling? It's not too much. Some of these cases were a little rough, and quite honestly, my way of dealing with them was this. So this is actually this next poem is about one of my first interviews as an investigator. The airport waiter. The claimant killed a wasp during our interview. The wasp entered the coffee shop, landed behind my left ear. Instinctively, I grabbed it, thinking it a flower, throwing it back into the air absently. He kept complaining of his job very calmly, and when the wasp returned, he rolled up a document and struck. The wasp fell to the ground, writhing. He told me to step on it. I couldn't, so he stepped on the wasp until it stopped moving. When it was all over, the barista gave me the bathroom code. I shut the door behind me before the man outside who ignored my "no, sorry" could follow. I shut the door of the bathroom stall and slid down to the sudden blood that had seeped when I forgot my own nakedness. Building rapport. In the field, I never want to be attractive, only well-groomed. I always wear my glasses and am usually long-sleeved. Sometimes I purposefully expose a tattoo to build rapport. Sometimes I speak lower and slower to make you more comfortable. Find the fraud. A claimant who is at fault for a loss may still be eligible for a settlement. A claimant whose claims have no evidentiary support may still be accepted. A claimant who is seriously injured may not be eligible for a settlement. A claimant who did not comply with the process may have their claim denied. If someone dies at their job during their lunch break, Their family may not be compensated. If someone dies while driving their car to work, their family will not be compensated. The property manager. He slid me his business card before his first word, with HR present, late from a meeting. I was offered coffee by 3 different women. After an opening question, he decided to begin his narrative, accustomed to his tone in the conference room. And when I brought us back to the crux of the matter, I made sure it was soft. It's all about eye contact and slouched shoulders. He'd squint if I became specific, trying to place me in his catalog of desire or distrust, his suit stiffening forward in his seat, then splayed back with relief. The attorney advised me not to ask him directly about the alleged harassment, but to focus instead on all of her faults. As a young, inexperienced property manager who faked her references and qualifications, as someone who knew how to lie. Auto interview. I'll say it. I'm sick of making space for vacuums, small rooms, and business cards. Tight clothing under fluorescent lighting. I was interviewed by the DA in hopes of leaving the field in my theater shoes from high school and the stocking socks from my friend's mother. Turns out I wasn't secretary material for the government. A day later, it's a blessing. But if I have to enter another man's office, allowed to use the desk and not his chair, if I have to sit on another vacant apartment floor, I swear I couldn't manage a department even though I have. What does it mean when your language is filled with 1,000 voices hungry for money? You begin to forget your face, adaptable as water, bright as trust. You become the great messenger of everybody's woes, the harbinger of pain, the archivist, archaeologist. I become you when listening. It's deeper than sound. And dreams haunt the sentences. No play, all work. All the dead rest unspoken to, almost forgotten under all those bricks and words. Sometimes I find the divine in traffic, too tired to think or speak, recognizing my hand as it turns the wheel. Sometimes I recall my own devastation in the words I write out. Never in the moment. I am nothing but a sponge. My mother always said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. And still I pour. Evidence. I dig through the garbage of your legacy. With gloves, I take each piece, place it in a Ziploc bag, spread it out across the grass, looking for your name. Got a few more. Are we doing okay time-wise? What is time anymore? Don't open that door. Okay. The social worker. He was diagnosed young. That's what led him to this work. He's managing, but a little like glass. Positive is a cruel word for the afflicted. The panic attack was in question, despite what life does. And he loves who he loves, lost his breath in the whitewashed office. After the director's lofty demands, words they sink. What is legitimate when your own body protests? What is work without a little heartbreak? Off the record, I'm supposed to investigate a global pandemic. I call everyone. The calls, they ring until the end of time. I call everyone. The calls they answer tremble like an earthquake. I call everyone. The calls they answer are tired and 2 months late on rent. I ask myself, why should I call anyone with a heartbeat? A single mother asked if I was still recording. I assured her no. She said years ago she was robbed, at gunpoint, at work, shot 5 times. A bullet still lives in her spine. She wants her boys to know she's strong and has worked since the age of 12. The state denied her disability because she was still able to hold her baby. And yet, an employee who slips in the walk-in without cracking a single egg can file a claim. Safety. The HR manager says, right now, work is providing more structure and safety than anywhere else. Auto interview. I capture moons on my calendar to remember the tides, the pull of an idea, a love and a touch. Yes, touch. Amidst the deadlines, the interview dates, and dead time of unanswered calls, I call the planets to look for a feeling. Within a grid of white squares, I see the smallness of my despair, the curved mold of my back, the disease without name except pain. Around the blue slabs and bullet points are the breaths of water, strings of stars that dizzy, the warm breeze and lemon leaves, the pulse of the night. The questions. Do you understand this conversation is being recorded? Is it being recorded with your consent? Spell your full name. Birth date, social security number, driver's license. Are you right or left-handed? Do you speak any other languages? Do you have any nicknames or aliases? Where do you live? Where did you work before this? Any concurrent employment? When were you hired with the insured? What are your job duties, schedule, wage? Tell me about your injury. What day was the accident? What were you doing? Were there any witnesses? Did you report your injury? Did you seek medical treatment? How was the claim initiated? Tell me what makes your pain worse. What makes it go away? Thank you.
Oh, clap. Thank you, Hannah. It's really wonderful. I first heard that work, and I guess fall 2019. There was a reading for a, there's a strange reading because it was like supposed to be a reading for a poets and punk rock anthology, and the contributors had written all kinds of stuff. But Hannah was one of the readers that night over in Oakland at Pro Arts. Yeah, yeah. I forgot to mention too when or where the reading is on Saturday. When and where? It's 7 p.m. And Brent, could you hold up each of those posters? There's one. You can take one of these with you if you have a place to share it. Um, the reading with Angel Dominguez and Ronaldo Wilson is at Alley Cat Books on 24th. It's near Treat Street in Harrison, between Treat and Harrison. Really great place. If you haven't been there, check it out. It's one of the best kind of cultural centers in the city. And some very interesting stuff is going to be happening with that place in the coming month or so. And so keep your ears open. The store is changing hands, and an interesting crew is coming in. So it's going to be really sweet. Yeah. And really good for the city, which loses stuff all the time. And especially during this pandemic, we've lost so many cultural spaces. It's just remarkable, besides the commercial spaces that have been closing, Yeah. So when I got this book, Rose, Sun, Water, from Angel Dominguez, it's funny because it's written Rose, Sun, Water, but then the title of the book is actually, and everywhere that it's written in the book, it's Rose, Sun, Water on the title pages and so forth. But then it's one word. It's a composite word that's pressed all together with the capitals retained and so forth. So officially, it's a one-word title, Rose, Sun, Water, and I think this is really demonstrative of a little bit of who Angel is and where he's coming from. He writes, "For Steve, may you always dream out loud. May you always feel home. May this book become a portal." And then many memes, moons, and manuscripts of love. If you guys are Instagram habitues, check out Angel's Instagram sometime. There have been daily memes generated throughout the pandemic. Rose, Sun, Water is Angel's second book. There is an earlier one that is called Black Lavender Milk, and that's his Instagram handle, or their Instagram handle. And that's from a press called Timeless Infinite Light. Angel got a BA at UC Santa Cruz and an MFA from the Jack Kerouac School, which Hannah did as well, and which is at the Naropa University in Boulder, Colorado. Angel's third book, Desgraciado, The Collected Letters, is coming soon from Nightboat Books in spring 2022. So we've seen the cover, we've seen the images. It's going to be a big deal and a beautiful book, so really looking forward to that. Let's welcome Angel Dominguez.
Hola a todos. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here today, though I know you're all here for class, so you have to be here. So now that you're stuck here, I'm glad to be here. And I gotta say, as I've been telling Steve all week, I feel like Lazarus. I feel like this residency has saved my life in a very strange way. I feel like I had fallen asleep and forgotten a lot about who I am or what I am or why I am. And this week, getting to talk with students, getting to talk with classes, getting to hear, work, new ideas, the ways in which all of y'all are moving through the world and this reality has just been so life-giving in so many ways. I felt so nourished, I actually like forgot to eat yesterday during the consultation hours. No, this is absolute lie. I was completely just enthralled by the energy of everyone, and to be in this space, which is for so long just been like an imaginary space in my screen. I wasn't actually sure if it was real, and so when I arrived here and found it, it felt very special. It is very special to be here, to be sharing space and energy with you all. So I'm going to be reading from all three books just for fun. I haven't read from Black Lavender Milk in years. Shout out Timeless Infinite Light, MG Spiro, Joel Gregory, the entire TIL crew, who took a chance on a young hood rat from Van Nuys, California. Shout out the 818, shout out the great 18, should I say. And so Black Lavender Milk is dedicated for everybody that ever held me, for my grandfather, Sheesh. And it's a book about mourning, it's a book about loss, and I won't read very much of this because, like I said, I haven't read it in literal years. And it's out of print now. But if you want it, you can email me. I'll send you the galleys. The book is blue, also. All of the interior is blue. Language, the images, everything. Thank you, Joel. This is the opening section called Vestibule A, Appendix 1. I write the book before falling apart. I fall with the pages. I sway with the dirt. I coddle the failure until it's become a bird, until it crashes in a field, until it's become erased, until it becomes until. The sentences are creaking with the way they hold water, the weight dispersed between the book and the body holding the book. I build attention to let go. I forget how we approach writing and start with what's missing. I get lost and tell no one. I let the book sink until it is another form of emptiness. I am more interested in its lack. The scene erodes with a violet fragility. I soak in a bath of rose petals. The water goes from pink to dark bruise. I lose track of the continent I'm writing in. I forget the frame of the novel. The language grows wild. I give up haunting all my failures. I work them into my skin like a poem. I burn the book so many times the manuscript exists as a form of condensation. The sky opens up and pours out a book that you'll never read. I wish I could still speak it. I wish I could remember what we say. Every yesterday piles itself into a dendritic agate pose, and in repose, the novel writes itself into my sleep. I dream of many airports, but never a plane. I say the word sky, and the window becomes a door frame. I don't have the strength to pick up the phone. The book is dead, and I am dragging its entrails across a continent. I smash the book against my face and weep when I can't read the words. Our longing is our legitimacy. That's what Cecilia told me, documenting detritus from a summer Creekside performance. Several people die in the writing of this novel, or they died while the novel was being written. I lack a language to communicate. I wish I could tell you the color and breath of a flower. I wish I could explain lavender to you. I made a dark midnight from the sound of my living. I boil water and shed from stress, infinite realities, blurring. In one, I am 2 centimeters to my left. Nothing comes together and all archival components fail. I forget what I'm talking to you about. The book stops writing and dreaming feels further away, so I interrupt myself with living. I have visions of bodies on beaches holding flares at sunset, but that's not important. When the book is not happening, I find lost time trickling in through my wrist. I resist the urge to be so specific. I dream the novel upon landing, the novel that was never a novel but an orchard. The manuscript was always just a hole in the ground. The sun snows until rain overtakes the creek in a flood. I abandon the book under the cover of escape. I make my way, sniffing the lilt sky for signs of light, a dim become bright. And I think that's all I'm going to read to you from this book. Thank you. And so this book, Rose, Sun, Water, this came out this year with the operating system. Shout out an incredible editor, human being Eli Moss, who really believed in this work, and this book means the world to me. I lost my grandmother's home to gentrification in Van Nuys, California, and I couldn't save the home. I couldn't buy the house, right? I couldn't buy the house now if I wanted to. But I did get to save my favorite window. This is my absolute favorite window. And it's with me forever now. And this is a window that everyone in my family looked through. This is a window that if you visited the house, you looked through it. It was inevitable. I won't tell you what window it is now, but you can ask me later. I might lie to you. And in this window, you know, sometimes I think I might still be 5 years old on a slip and slide outside. I might still be 10 falling off my bike and getting super itchy in the grass. I might be 21 and smoking things by the avocado tree. Who knows? This book is dedicated to my grandmother, Sofia Dominguez, who is still with us. Don't get weird. Para mamá, la flor más fuerte de mi familia. And this book was an entirely other book. I thought this book was something else entirely, and I'm very grateful to the operating system and to Eli Moss for giving me the time and space to follow this language, to find the book, because again, I thought I was writing something completely different. I thought this was really focused on like a trip. It was going to be like this travelogue type of a thing. It was supposed to be a sister sequel to Black Lavender Milk. It still kind of is. But as I was driving back and forth from the Santa Cruz Mountains to Van Nuys to help pack up my grandmother's house, something changed, right? There was this sense of like, I must save the house. How do you save a house? What, do I, write extremely dense descriptions of everything? Do I get the crumble of the granite right? Do I get the red asphalt? What is it that I must do? I ripped a piece of the wallpaper to take with me. It's on my bookshelf. But my grandmother showed me this handwritten poem that actually opens the book. The image of her handwriting is here. And she actually doesn't know this because pandemic and everything, I haven't been able to get down to her, so just let's keep this between us. But for the author photo, it's me and my grandmother. Because my grandmother showed me this handwritten poem, and I knew what I had to do. And so this book is an attempt to finish that poem. So I'm going to read you the poem. I've never read anybody the poem. Déjame soñar. Soñar, aunque sea de vez en cuando. Déjame sentirme libre como el tiempo que nadie puede detener. Déjame sentirme pájaro, pero no aquel pobre y herido al que le han destrozado el nido, quedado aquel sin castigo y el pobrecito sin fe. Lo que quiero es volar lejos, muy lejos, de ciudad en ciudad, de pueblo en pueblo, y recoger de las gentes amor y cariño, regarlo por todo el camino y mostrarle al mundo entero que todavía existe amor y cariño. And so the first section is called The Cenote Blossoms in Van Nuys, California. And I had never read a book growing up that ever mentioned California. So when I was growing up, I'd lie and say that I was from Los Angeles. I was born in Hollywood, but nobody knew what the Valley was. Nobody knew what Van Nuys is. It's being so gentrified now that I'm sure everyone will. There was like a brewery or something that opened up recently, and that's how I knew it was the funeral march of gentrification from there on out. And so this section is actually very important to me. And so I'll just read it to you. A family of immigrants moves to the valley beyond the city. The home they find is without any record of city planning and was built in 1906 when a train still ran through this town. This house becomes a home. This home becomes a type of field or portal. They plant fruit trees from seed, twin aguacates from the Yucatan take 2 decades to become a myth. The children's children become a new distance. The gardenias levitate. The pitaya blossoms a palm tree to grow upon. The lemon trees talk to one another throughout the night. The oranges grow less sour with every handful of salt buried beneath. New trees are planted. Many spirits leave their bodies before these words are ever written. They live with us, and when you speak their names aloud, they know you a little better. The concrete Virgen grows roses out of nothing to watch over outside the kitchen. The mulberry tree plants legends in the hearts of the nearby inhabitants before bowing before the chainsaw. Later, a mango tree grows up to tell the story of these mysterious berries that had no name until Colorado dropped Mayatan words into a somnambulist ear. Years later, this memory would come across as orange in its summer atmosphere, orange and creek sound, and so small. The chaya emerges to nourish the keeper de la huerta antes que the house dissolves. The somnambulist calls the home an orchard because the trees allowed them to blossom and become this after image beyond the city. The city becomes something else around the orchard. The city begins to punch holes in everyone's memory, demanding the inhabitants adapt to the ongoing invasion of everywhere else, wanting to be where they are not. A sickness that spread to the somnambulists, the hunger for departure, thirsty for the transit fix, all of it imaginary, none of it real. The veins of light that become asphalt by day were a kind of comfort now grown strange. The truth is a spiral, an ongoing descent through cycles. Each return to origin allows for a further vertical distance in memory. See, I sew this now onto yours as you read this, and we become cross-stitched and bound to one another. The city continues humming within the body despite all the silence surrounding the somnambulist. Our blood is always buzzing. The house is going to be destroyed before the book is ever finished. There is nothing to do but bloom this net of neurons and temporality, and sometimes you have to rebuild the structures within your body again and again and again and again and again and again and again. I remember that I do not remember. The rain comes down in thick brushstrokes of spectral pigments, piles of color growing thick with movement. The trees, they dance, they twirl. I build a house in the dead-end housing complex of my heart, and the rent is cheap enough to live, and every tenant is on a second chance account of some kind, my heart included. I keep trying to build the square footage into my organs. I keep trying to form a floor plan out of the memory. Every time I touch my hands to those walls, feet to the floors, I am trying to remember a feeling beyond the ruin to come. There will be no pyramid. There will be no archive. Our home will become the shape of an overpriced future I can't afford. I hope every tenant's aguacates rot before they can use them. I build a roof above a dream I have yet to have. The empty chairs manifest spirits and ancestors, and we're all moving out of there before it's too late. Y'all good? Should I read a little more Rose Sunwater? Again, this is the first time I've read this in person, y'all. The book launch was like, oh my God, the book launch was insane. We had like lost power. Okay, everyone says they like want to live in the woods, but let me tell you, as someone who lives in the woods, you don't, okay? Power goes out just because it rains, it's windy somewhere else, your power goes out again. Anyway, like we had to go to my office to launch this book on Zoom day of, so that was a lot of fun. And yeah, this book's weird. Dear Rose, I want you to be sun, become water. I want to save the house, save the city, save the sea, and still I can't. All I can do is hold them together in my memory, piling all this language next to me, counting containers and measuring their weight. And is this sentence a year yet, or does anyone ever really die? Did we ever exist at all? Under the blue flower Scorpio moon, I dream of more time with the lemon trees. I dream of the aguacates teaching me everything they know about growing in freedom. I learned to become the house and begin to build one in the heart of my heart. And I forgot to take a brick. I wanted the memory to stick more than a maybe. I tried to make a talisman out of the tragedy. The angels' trumpets levitate and face the sky when I return to the house in dreams. It seems the structure continues to grow older in the imaginary, which may be an entangled dream or another thing happening else where the house survives. I don't assume to know the finer details of the holographic universe. I feel it sometimes, and I can't language fast enough to render it real. And so we remain parallel, never touching. And yet, is that not a form of touch? Is touch not the repulsion of electrons? Atoms hovering like star systems, becoming a type of distance that communicates nearness, the impossibility of connection. We become enmeshed in this language mess, and yet it's the only way I can reach you. This weary warble, the low yawn of the somnambulist waking the forest. And I might read one more little piece of Rose Sun Water before sharing Desgraciado, which I'm actually very excited to read to y'all from. We making it? Am I all right on time? We're rocking? Solid. Oh, I know what to read. Okay. No, I picked it before, don't worry. A cenote opens up to eat the house, to keep it safe. The house is with the ancestors now. The inhabitants scatter across the city void and beyond, and the pitaya becomes several palm trees around the city. The roses explode out across the landscape, blossoming in the rain before evaporating along with the water. The aguacates lend themselves to immigrant households to keep their families fed. The lemons scatter along with the oranges to form new tints of sunlight that will always look like mama's lemons and Shisha's oranges. The colors of the house become other times of day, lilting memories from the soul of those who know how precious this dream can be. I tattoo the wallpaper to my body. I dig a hole where I keep every stone safe. The house itself evaporates into a rain that does not end, by which I mean all our dreams become clouds to nourish the future, to nourish our ancestors and those who are gone but still roaming within us. I have a dream where I drive the entirety of the grid while the city sleeps. I work the city's sleep into a type of fabric to craft a shawl. Quiero hacer una tilma de Los Ángeles y el poder de tus sueños. No me quiero olvidar de nada cuando llega el tiempo a soñar otro sueño. Quiero ser como un hilo de luz, a costurar los sueños, los vidas, los tiempos. No quiero que nadie se olvide. There are more words right now than there have ever been before. I think eventually I'll learn to let go of the city, or I will become the city. There is no in-between. Merida melts into the mountain, or as the clouds skim the microclimate, the image of the peninsula drizzles, made prismatic by morning light. It's in these moments I see you most clearly. When the sky opens up its portals, when light leans into you, we converse in these moments of liminality. Our language is a strong light that guides spirits home beyond the structure of the house. Light a candle tonight with the intention of hope beyond hope. Leave it burning until the wax has ended its verticality. What do you see when this now becomes before? In the valley of your spine lies a harvest of endocrine flowers that give you a new, soft life. You tend to them by taking it easy on yourself, learning to cry, returning to write, writing this book together right now. I dreamt we wrote that. I keep nodding off into the spiral, like 6 a.m. fingertips touching a stream that is both frozen and running. There is a continuity to the way these electrons hum. The swaying of the pen keeps reversing its order, forming other portals and words I don't know. The rain taps at the window in triplets on a bus or airplane. The atmosphere grows a language to understand itself. And I'll stop there. And am I okay on time to read like a couple? I know this is a lot, y'all. Great. Yeah, so I'm just gonna read a couple from this new book that's coming out with Nightboat, I believe in January or February. This is a long time coming. This started as a chapbook that was published by Econotextual Objects. Shout out Raquel Gutierrez for believing in this little chap. I reached out to Raquel and I was like, hey, I can't remember how to write poetry anymore, but I've been writing these love letters to my worst enemy. Thanks to Farid Matuk and Susan Briante, who co-taught a class at Naropa in which they gave a writing prompt that was write a love letter to your worst enemy. And I could not think of a worse enemy than Diego de Landa, who on July 12, 1562, in Mani, Yucatan, attempted to erase the Yucatec Mayan language. He gathered all of the codices, the idols, desecrated bodies of ancestors, and burned them together on a platform in Mani, Yucatan. He wanted to, it was called an auto de fe, an act of faith, right? He wanted to make sure that the indigenous would not be able to return to their devil worshiping. He actually stood trial in Spain for atrocities against the indigenous, and he won that trial and was sent back to Spain with a nice little promotion. He became Bishop of the Yucatan. And it's, during his return that he allegedly wrote a text, only an incomplete facsimile was found in a Madrid library. So the original lost to history, lost to time. He wrote this document called Relación de Cosas Pasado en el Yucatán, or Remembrance of Things Past in the Yucatan. And it's often used as one of the foremost texts for pre-Spanish Yucatec Mayan culture and things of that sort. And you see how that could maybe be a little problematic, considering he tried to destroy all of that. He also was Diego's cute, right? He also used Spanish inquisitional tactics, such as tying the wrists of the indigenous behind their back, hoisting them up with weighted stones, and then painting their naked bodies with boiling pig's fat. Because he didn't believe them when they said that they didn't have any codices, that they didn't have any idols. And in fact, this forced the indigenous to go find some. And many of the indigenous actually recanted their confessions. I mean, wouldn't you admit to anything with boiling pig's fat on your bare flesh? I know I would. So anyway, he's dead. He died. He's dead. Love his death. May you all live long enough to see your enemies fall. So I'm going to read to y'all from this book. So yeah, I wrote love letters to him for 7 years. It's weird. It's really weird. We can talk about it later. This is the first line of the book that I've never read out loud. Diego, the world is bigger than we will ever know. Diego, you dead man, I write to you. It's been centuries, I'm sure, since someone called out to you, and now I do. Diego de Landa, the year is 2014 and the calendar's been reset. Your story buried beneath your auto de fe, burning our bodies down. We've no one to rescue that sound, but what am I saying? I speak English into robots and write to you in anything but Spanish, lengua catalan. I wanted you to know I've touched your soil. And throughout Madrid and Barcelona, I've carved large red letters in churches and chapels. I've painted Mayan conquest on subways and buses. I wrote, fuck Spain on every other flag I could find. I started small fires in museums. I stopped short of smashing mirrors and windows, and I can't erase you now, Diego. There's too much to wipe out on data disks and clouds. A fire couldn't find you now, but perhaps you'll drown. Maybe I'll pull you through the cenotes on my gringo tongue, rinse your lungs clean with Xibalba water. What would you say to me then? And could your heart be pure? I'd have to taste test the ash of your organs and fiddle with your bones to be certain I could trust you to go on dying unacquitted by the light of time. See, I want your trial to continue. Maybe I want to save you. Love, A. Dear Diego, the skies are full of dragonflies today, and everyone fetishizes my name. I'm reminded of this when engaging with the institution. Is it angel or is it on hell? I always say whatever you find easiest to pronounce, but really I'd prefer no name or pronoun. It's these instances of being acutely aware of my race that bring me back to you or bring you back to me. I'm not sure which it is or if I keep thinking of writing these letters, will I ever get your lungs alight? I can't make a fire. I'm trying to yield more than I advance. I am learning that not all words are always heard or spoken, though in this moment, I hope every dictionary snaps its spine into a deafening ocean. Diego, I worry about things like Spanish proficiency tests for dual citizenship, PhD programs, and the accumulated suffering brought on by globalization. I remember learning about manifest destiny in my Cortez middle school, whose mascot was a conquistador. I remember getting angry every time we watched a National Geographic documentary about the benefits of imperialism. Benefits like my bastardized name, LAUSD, Chalupa Thursdays, a colonizer on every corner. I wonder what they would have called me if your language never came. Because between you and me, I really prefer the name Jack. I'm just going to read you one last one from the end. And I've been telling all the classes this week, the writing knows better than we do. So that being said, this is, the book picked this one. I didn't. Diego, I don't know that I can defeat you. I don't know that I can win. I don't know that I'll live to see the other side of the dream in my head. I don't know if it matters. These brief glimpses of futurity beyond the scar tissue in the sky. I keep scrying clouds and leaves after it rains. I keep screening the energies I allocate from myself and the rest of the world. I keep tightening the circle until all I'm left with is your heart in my palms, my heart in my heart, our hearts superimposed onto one another. I pump blood from your dust. Your darkness lends me a shadow to wear like a cloak. I keep shedding these toxic husks of love and emptiness when I write to you, like coming out of my skin, like coming down from interdimensional dissolution and time travel. And sometimes I'd like to think we knew one another when you were breathing. And maybe that's why I can't let you go. All these lifetimes later, I'm haunted by your scraps and stains. I keep rubbing the pieces of you that reside in me, like the friction will evacuate you from my body, like decolonization is even possible, like colonization isn't a constant echoing dog whistle attempt to erase the frequencies of our ancestors from our memory banks. That's the problem with history, all this told by an idiot, a tale full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. All this mess and mess and mess and mess, and no one to clean it up. I keep trying to scoop and save the salt of my family, trying to make a menagerie from our history, our ancestors' histories, and I keep forgetting my own and keep making room for what's already been taken from us. I keep practicing a kind of silence that does not end. I keep trying to clear my mind of time. I keep trying to access the Akashic records and travel through the spiral to find you so that maybe we can think through this together and remember. And do you remember anything, Diego? Do you remember anything at all? I hold the husk of the dying empire to my dry skin like pumice to callus. I keep trying to wash my hands of your hands. The way those hands took everything and accomplish nothing. I am not afraid of you, Diego. I am not afraid of the echoes that find me in the dark, the sudden thump of your ghost at 3 a.m., asking me to write again. I can't keep vomiting all this language back into my blood. I can't keep using your heart as a coping mechanism, nibbling on the dark flesh of what connects us. I keep thinking there might be a healing narrative at work here where, if only, and yet I know this is a lie. Just like you're sympathetic to the colonizer history. Maybe feeling better is not what we want. No, I want to remember. I want to remember every loss. I want to remember how, despite the hordes of white history, we remain. We continue to bloom for no one but us until we are once again the sky. A. Thank you. I think that's time.
Hi, so Hannah, you said that it was very helpful for you dealing with the job to be like letting it all out in your poems like that. Um, was it helpful? Was it something that it's such a hard position to be in, like while you're doing the job, that was like actually writing the poems helpful, or was it just like after the fact, looking back on that you're like, it's really important that I got this on the paper?
Good question. Oh, maybe I should. Let me take this off. Sorry. It's a tricky one. Okay. Now that I've totally fumbled the mic. So it kind of sounds like a process question. And I would say that like both. So it's funny because, you know, things got so crazy and hectic at the beginning of the pandemic. We were getting inundated with COVID cases, and it was the most insane workflow I ever had, and combined with just the horrors of the pandemic. At a certain point, my autopilot wasn't really working anymore. And I was like, oh, right, like I'm a human being underneath all of this. And, you know, at a certain point, it does get hard when you're interviewing people about very difficult subject matter. You're interviewing people who are legitimately injured, or they're not legitimately injured, but they are in horrible economic circumstances, or they just need help, you know, but are reaching for it in the wrong ways. And so to try to make my answer shorter, I would say that I would have moments with cases where I'd have to stop writing the report, stop listening to the audio again, and just write a poem. And then at another point, I got into the habit of just making like an hour of time before work every morning to just be like, I'm getting this out now because I know these things are already on my mind. And so I hope that answers your question, kind of.
I do not have that kind of job, so.
Hello. This is a question for Angel. Being from around the valley myself, I noticed that there's not many fools who partake in the arts. So I gotta ask, what specifically got you into poetry in Van Nuys, and how did that initial spark impact your writing today?
That's great. I mean, writing's always been sort of a part of my life, And, I was always like scribbling words in notebooks. In packing up my grandmother's house, I found out just how many notebooks. They're all destroyed. They're in the damn landfill. All that writing was so bad. And it wasn't until, actually, yeah, so I went to UC Santa Cruz, and then I had to take a leave of absence. And it was during that leave of absence where I could feel late capitalism just like squeezing my soul from my body, and I felt like it was becoming increasingly difficult to do anything creative because I had to wake up at 7 in the morning and catch this bus and catch that bus and then walk a mile to the job that I hated and then be at that job until it was dark, and then I had to walk again and catch a bus and blah. So during that time, I decided to give myself a project. And that project was to write a poem a day for a year. And some days I forgot to write a poem, other days I'd write 10. Do those poems still exist? No, but I don't think they needed to become an archive of any kind. It was kind of this, it was kind of like taking care of myself in a weird way and asking myself to not let go of this thing that I have to do. I don't even know how to explain that. Like I have to. And in writing about Van Nuys, writing about the Valley and things of that sort, I learned that from Seshu Foster. Seshu Foster was the first poet, person, professor, incredible field note coyote of the world that he is. He was the first person to call me a poet. And that was 10 years ago, actually. That was 10 years ago this year. And Seshu Foster, his work, and he himself has really taught me to be mindful of the responsibility that we have of documenting undocumented histories. With gentrification coming in and just changing so much of everything all at once, all the time, there are narratives at work, there are histories, there are people who may be forgotten, and now it's just an H&M, but, and so it's like, I think the responsibility of the poet, the writer, in some aspects is to document those undocumented histories, to create these containers of language where we can keep these things safe, right? That was a great question, thank you.
This might be a follow-up question in a way. I wrote down, there are more words now than there's ever been. Did I get that right?
Yes, there are more words now than there have ever been before.
Than there have ever been before.
Yes.
Can you expound on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot about like reality and just like being alive as a person in the world who is perceived by others, who has the ability to perceive. And I think that like there is something to be said about sort of the accumulation of language that has occurred so rapidly in like the last 20 years due to technology. Like the Library of Congress stopped archiving every single tweet. When Twitter first came out, the Library of Congress said that they were going to store all the tweets. And, however many years later it is, thank God they're not. I'm very, very thankful for that. But I do think that there is kind of a saturation of language occurring at this time. It's a lot of static. There's like a lot of noise. There's a lot of, yeah.
Do you think it's a devaluation?
I think that's a great question. Do I think there's a devaluation? Yeah, I think there can be a kind of devaluation in sort of the repetitive use of language, right? Like that's kind of a tactic of, for lack of a better word, like colonizer fascists, right? Like they love their taglines, they love their words, they love to imbue language with this kind of, like language is a weapon for them, and so the flattening of meaning is very dangerous, I think. And so, it's up to you poets and writers to really guard the word, right? Like you help keep the word sacred ultimately. Yeah, and that work, can be on Twitter, or it can be in your notebook, or it can just be in your own communities having conversations, right? because I think we all agree words mean things. But then sometimes I hop on social media and I'm like, oh my God, do y'all know that words mean things? Because some of y'all are just talking. I hope that answers your question.
It's a short answer.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could feel free to send me an email. I'm happy to have like a longer, discussion about the economy of language and all that fun stuff. But yeah, there are more words now than there have ever been before, and I think the access to words is more than it's ever been before. So long as we keep our libraries open, right? Gotta have a library. My email address is the title of my first book, blacklavendermilk@gmail.com. Don't send me anything mean. I'll delete it.
Yeah, so this question is for both of you. Speaking of language, using language very differently to like honor certain feelings and parts of your life. I was wondering if you could expand on that, as well as I overheard you, Angel, talking yesterday about how you didn't put in translations in your books, and I'd like to. I hope you could expand on
Yeah.
why you did that as well, please.
Oh,
Thank you.
yeah. Maybe I'll start and then we'll get, okay, cool. All of the Spanish in Rose Sun Water is untranslated. There are no translations that exist in the book, and that was very purposeful for me. My grandmother doesn't speak in English. She can speak English, but why would I warp her energy and language in a way that wouldn't, it felt like it would be a disservice, but beyond that, the reason, y'all want to know a secret? I forgot to actually put this in there's an end note about why it's not translated, and I forgot to put this in there. Don't tell the operating system. But the real reason that it's untranslated is that my hope was that an English-speaking reader who may not be familiar with Spanish would reach out to their community and ask for help in understanding this text. And it's asking the reader to do a different kind of work. I feel like when we engage with books at large, it's like books ask us to do a certain type of work. And this kind of work was very important to me because, I could have translated it. There are translations that exist, but I ultimately decided against that because it was more important for me for there to be a larger conversation surrounding what languages we privilege as being, like why is it English supremacy? Why does it have to be? That's not who I am by any means. And
Why can't you speak two languages?
exactly, why can't you speak two? Yeah, 3, 4, as many as there need to be.
Use in your life.
Exactly. And so in that way, I invited the languages of my grandparents, of my family, into this book. And so much of my work has been sort of like moving away from like the academic tongue and sort of a re-engagement with like the quotidian, the everyday. Like this is, what am I going to hide behind anymore? Why hide behind anything? That's something Ronaldo V. Wilson taught me, right? When you're an artist, when you're a writer, the stakes are your very self. These are the stakes. This is life and death. Whether or not it feels that way for someone else, it doesn't matter to me, right? I hinge my life on this work. Yeah, words are cool. Hannah?
No, I'm so glad you brought up what Ronaldo said about like not hiding, because I feel like my other two full-length manuscripts that I was working on before I kind of threw myself into this project were very experimental, very hybrid, conceptual, like fresh out of the Naropa school of thought. And I think I was hiding behind abstraction. And instead of like asking the bigger questions of myself, it was like, how can I complicate this? How can this be aesthetically interesting? And it's, and the fact of the matter is that's not generally what resonates with people. People like to hear about other people's experiences, and somebody earlier today said something about sort of giving a voice to the voiceless, and I feel like in some ways I'm doing that with this work, because I have to be so objective all the time, and I have to work with really mundane legal terminology, and I can't have any opinion in there at all. I can't have any creativity, and so this was kind of a way to both give a voice to the voices who are, I mean, we're talking about their livelihoods in these cases. You know, some of them are dead, some of them are very ill, some of them, you know, are emotionally not well, and so it's both that and also like finding my own language through them in a way, if that makes sense.
Any other questions? I'm done yelling, I promise. That ended.
You can always yell.
First to Hannah, I really appreciated the roofer. That was my favorite that you shared. So thank you for your insight. But my question is for Chuck. What with the like ongoing battle with gentrification and everything, for like the next 3-5 generations, do you have more of a positive or like a cynical idea of where like the arts are going as far as like keeping culture in the works and keeping it relevant to new generations?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that there is sometimes like this misconception that like art doesn't exist outside of like institutional spaces or like outside of museums and things. And you know, I'll never forget back in it was like 2012. I was visiting Los Angeles from Colorado, and I met up with Seshi Foster, and he took me on a mural tour of East LA and City Terrace and Alhambra, and showed me all this art that I wasn't aware of. And it's like, how to combat gentrification, right? Like one, I don't have any tips for like how to fiscally overcome conglomerate companies and frickin' Zillow buyers and all this trash that's pouring in, you know. But what I can say is like it's important that we remember, right? It's important that we remember and that we hold on to what we can hold on to. And that we also honor our own like bandwidth, our own levels of energy, and also like recognize our limitations, right? It's like, yes, I'm an anti-capitalist, but can I destroy capitalism by myself? No, I cannot. You know, but can I defeat capitalists? Yeah, pretty sure. I'm small, but I'm scrappy. You know, and I think that in terms of like working with multi-generational memory, it's like it's helpful to have conversations. It's helpful to spread that knowledge, to spread that memory across many, right? And that's, I mean, that isn't that the the tactics of the indigenous? Isn't it oral tradition to retain memory, to like keep these stories from the colonizer? Like that's why I talk to y'all about cenotes, right? Like cenotes are Yucatec Mayan portals to Xibalba, to the underworld, and that stays. It doesn't matter if tourists can now pay 600 pesos to go and be gross in a cenote in like what is essentially a portal of my ancestors, right? That I can't stop that. There's a whole machine there at work. But what I can do is I can help to preserve the mythology. I can help to educate those who wish to be open to that kind of education, right? And so I think individually, like if you are experiencing, you know, gentrification in your own like hometown, like documentation. Documentation is so important because Google Maps won't remember for you. Google Maps will, no, I mean this sincerely because my grandmother's home, I looked at it on Google Maps, it's gone. It's these ugly, oh my God, they're so gross. They're just so gross. Plain stucco white cubes of trash that are like $5,000 a month to rent. And I'm just like, yo, you want to live on Satakoy that bad? I don't think you do. And so, yeah, I would say remember documentation, whether that be photograph, whether that be whatever medium you find. And just, try to keep the memory alive. And if you happen to have like the fiscal means and if it makes sense for you, do something about it. But I'll say this because like I love Los Angeles. I love Los Angeles to death, but I had to make peace with the fact that Los Angeles doesn't love me back. Los Angeles never loved me back. And that's okay, right? My family's a family of immigrants. They left the Yucatan Peninsula. They came to Los Angeles. They're in a closet in Compton. They eventually went to Hollywood and then Van Nuys. Maybe I'll go somewhere else. You carry so much inside of you. Like, I don't think any of you are really even consciously thinking about like all the histories, the narratives, the houses, the spaces, the places. All of it's built inside of your body. Your body remembers. So just let yourself remember. I don't know why I thought I could wear my glasses. It's not.
So hard with the mask.
I know. I don't need to see anything. It's fine.
Hi. So I noticed how both of you kind of read your pieces in kind of different manners about how you were like so calm with it, Hannah, and then for you, Angel, you were very like expressive and like explosive, especially. And I guess for both of you, did you ever, rehearse these things like in your head or out loud, and to the point where you could feel comfortable enough sharing it? And then for Hannah, for these situations, you mentioned how intense these situations are, like whether it's like economically or kind of health related. Do you feel like sometimes, or like in today's reading, did you feel like, you felt like you were almost like holding back because of how intense it is? Do you ever feel like these cases were so much and kind of infused a lot, or like took a lot of energy out of you, that you feel like to read it now, you feel like you're at like a different kind of state of mind compared to when you had these cases? And then for Angel, did you feel like, did you express them the way that you kind of like think about it, like in your head, kind of like, did you mean to kind of like emphasize these certain lines that you put in the piece? And, did you feel like you really expressed how much hatred and how much you wanted to call out, a dead man that kind of betrayed your culture?
Such an interesting question.
Yeah.
I never really thought about that before, but as you're saying it, I'm realizing there are some cases that I can look back and say like, ooh, like that was a rough interview, or that like left a mark on me. And those were usually the ones that I'd write about, but that wasn't always the case. Like there are some that I couldn't find language for. There's some, like there's a couple that I did not read today because I still kind of feel the same way I felt when I was interviewing the subject. And that usually happens, with fatalities and like these really motor vehicle accident cases and cases that touch close to home are the hardest ones, right? And so I think I found that in those instances where I was reminded of like my own trauma or my own experience, like similar experience, it felt safe to work within these parameters of like this like really matter of fact, like legal way of talking and being presentable. And so I guess I think I found both liberation in the constraint, as ironic as that sounds, and like safety, you know, like it gave me a form to use that was beyond me, but also part of me.
It had its parameters.
Exactly.
Yeah. I probably should rehearse.
Oh yeah, I realized I didn't even talk about
yeah.
that. Yeah, no.
Uh,
We rehearse.
I mean, you're.
I mean, I rehearse like
Look,
in my head.
Hannah could have flexed on y'all today. Like, she's one who knows how to memorize her work, and it's amazing. My brain can't do it anymore. I don't think. I mean, sometimes I know having like read, like the Rose Sun Water pieces. Like I have, I read that to so many classes this week that I kind of, it's in there. But in terms of like the intensity with Diego, I don't even know if I'm mad at Diego anymore. It's been 7 years. Like 7-year breakup is messy. And then it's like we're co-parenting this body, right? It's like I am not just Yucatec Mayan. There's Spanish ancestry in me. There is this inextricability between me and Diego. In the letters, there's this letter where I say, like I see his face in the mirror, or like I go searching for my biological father and use like a picture of Diego. And it's this, am I mad? Yeah. I'll always be mad about colonization, and I'll always speak against it. And that's the thing about colonization, is that it's like not over. Like I know there's like post-colonial studies and all that crap, but like, come on, no mames conmigo. Like, nah, that's still happening. That's why like AI robots are racist and things of that sort. Like quite literally, you can Google it. Like it's, their colonization is just happening through other language, right? And maybe that's back to the words, the importance of words, the value of words, right? And how do we keep those words safe? But yeah, to just briefly answer your question, I probably should rehearse. That's a good call. I'm gonna take that note, run with it. And then in terms of the intensity, like I'll just be honest with y'all, like
He's a Scorpio.
Wow. Yeah, well, that's true. I'm a Scorpio, Aries moon, Cap rising. So I'm very intense. But I don't know. It's like when I read the letters, it's like I'm reading them for the first time. And how would I read it to Diego? What if Diego was in front of me right now? I'd probably give him a hug. Yeah, very much. Yeah, thank you for that question. Great question.
My glasses on, maybe. I was thinking, I caught that Hannah said something like, I've never been drawn to fiction, something along that line. And I was thinking about, the fact that you both found your way to the Jack Kerouac School at Naropa, and some of the sort of gospel of Naropa revolves around something that gets called investigative poetics. And I'm thinking that some of that is going on in both your works. I mean, clearly in Hannah's, it's almost taking that, super literally, because the basis for the work is investigation, not just the subject out there, but the investigation is being investigated, and then in Angel's work too, this sense that I don't know, just these layers of, like I know you've traveled to back to Merida, for instance, and gone to places where your family has been and so forth. So it isn't just like I'm remembering, but you're also putting yourself into these investigative arrangements and such. So I don't know, maybe you could talk about that a little bit. Do you agree that this is something that's going on, something like investigative poetics, or where does fiction write in that? Because we've got a room where a lot of the people here like to write fiction.
Oh, I'm not hating on fiction.
We love
for the
fiction.
record.
Fiction's great. No, genuinely. Yeah.
Man, I don't even know how to answer that. Except when I went to Naropa or first got there, I was kind of bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like I'm like a nonfiction writer or something, and like I've only read stuff by dead white guys, you know? Like I didn't know what was going on. Like now, and Naropa was very, you know, somatic heavy. Like everything is about the body, and everything is, you know, kind of high art, conceptual in that way. And I think, and I'm also not hating on Naropa, to be clear. I love Naropa. But
Love JKS.
yeah, there were things that were both useful and things that I felt like I needed to unlearn. Like in terms of the investigative poetics, definitely that made a mark on me. And I kind of, it wasn't until later that I was like, oh, like it doesn't have to be like creative or documentarian. Like it can be a kind of hybrid of those things. And I also am just so inspired by like true events and the way that people talk, obviously from my poem, but like working with their language and like what is the language of these investigations, for example, like they're ways of me like exploring different lexicons, different tones, different, you know, different breaks, different. I feel like I veered from the question now, but
I feel like you're, yeah. I mean, investigation, I think, like, plays a role into our everyday lives. It's a matter of, like, scale. It's a matter of seeing. And I'll say for my own work, the importance of investigation, the importance of research, like, I'll just be honest with y'all, like, I want to talk my shit. And if I'm going to talk my shit, I have the proof. I've got the tools. I can point to the things. Like for Desgraciado, I'm not just raging blindly at this ghost. Like there was a lot of work that went into the actual like researching of everything that happened. I had a 6-month fight with the Encyclopedia Britannica because their article was just bullshit. It was like, Diego de Landa, hero of the Yucatec Mayans. And I was like, excuse me, what? There's actually a letter in the book because Encyclopedia Britannica finally wrote back to me. And that might seem like a petty squabble, and that's fine. I'm petty. I don't care. You know, all I care about is remembering history as it actually occurred and not through the lens of the colonizer that just seems to like white out over all of these atrocities and genocide and torture. Like over 56 million indigenous people were slaughtered because of globalization, because of the Inquisition, because of colonization. Literally so much so, and you can look this up, but so many indigenous people lost their lives that it actually changed the climate of the planet. That was like published a couple of years ago, and it blew my mind. It upset me so deeply. And so I think, you know, investigation, the research, it's all part of it because it's like one must know their own enemy, right? And so anybody, you know, who wants to be like, actually, Diego was this. I'm like, okay, I've got 7 years on you, bud. Let's talk, you know? Yeah, I don't know that necessarily answers the question. But I'll also say this about JKS and like somatic poetry and stuff. Beginning with the body really taught me a lot about writing. And it taught me a lot about being alive. And it taught me a lot about like actually listening to myself and listening to what's going on in my body and honoring those energy levels and not just running myself ragged to run myself ragged. And I am very grateful for my time with Naropa because I learned so much. It broke me open in ways that I could have never imagined, and I would have never written Black Lavender Milk without it. So shout out JKS. Way to go.
And just to add on very quickly, we actually did a stint of performance art while we were,
Yes, we did.
I mean, a little bit here, a little bit there, but that was another way where we were like, when language doesn't work, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know?
What are the tools you have? Your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was remiss at not just calling out to the great exponent of investigative poetics, who is the poet Ed Sanders, who keeps doing it. Just in the last few years, books on the Robert F. Kennedy assassination, Sharon Tate,
Oh, yeah.
and he's written so many histories in verse.
Mm.
Keeps that work going. And he probably knows more about the CIA than
The CIA.
yes, exactly. Yeah. One more question from the house? I see that guy over there. He has a question.
No pressure.
I'm adding all the pressure. This is the danger zone.
They're ready to crack, so push them over the edge.
It's okay. I'm ready to cry.
Ready to
nap. Yeah.
So I was a little hesitant about coming up here. You're so eloquent, both of you guys. But I wanted to ask you something, Angel. Like in my family, people don't like Latinx because in Spanish it's gendered. Everything is gendered. Even ellos, ellas is gendered. I was curious your take on Latinx.
Absolutely. I love that question. I just wrote an essay about that question. That'll be coming out in the next couple of months. So my feelings about Latinx are this, right? So Latinx actually came from South and Central America, from radical queer feminist communities. And so it wasn't actually like, I know the message boards, the Twitter threads are all like, it's an American term. No, it's not. It's actually not. First emerged in 2011, 2012, and the reason, yes, Spanish is a gendered language, absolutely. The Royal Academy of Spanish, it's like this group of I want to say it's like 55 people in Spain all decide what the Spanish language is. Good for them, proud of them. I'm really proud of them for putting in the time. But here's the thing, language is used by us, right? Like we are the people who use language. And so in that way, we're determining how language fits for ourselves. And so as a queer person, as a queer Latinx poet, the O's not really vibing with me so much anymore, and neither is the A. And so beyond the gender binary, I honor the X, I honor the E, the Latin, the Latinx, because all it really is a broadening of that frequency, right? It's just like calling all homies. Like calling all homies, including the non-gendered individuals. And so when the appearance of the term Latinx or Latin emerges out in the wild, as it were, it's not attempting to cancel out your experience as a Latino or a Chicano or a Latina. In no way is it doing that. In fact, it's more just like it's a broader wavelength, right? It's a wider frequency that is acting as sort of a beacon of resonance in many ways. So yeah, I welcome the X, I welcome the E, I welcome the language to arrive, right? Because there's still language beyond us. Like who knows what it'll be in 10, 15, 20 years. Because maybe we could do with the Latin prefix altogether, right? Because Latin America is for all Romance languages, and yet that is a direct erasure of all Black and indigenous people who live there, who exist, who have lived there forever. And yeah, I'm sorry to get so passionate about this. I literally just turned this essay in, and yesterday morning.
It's
So
really
good. Stop it. But I'm very grateful for this question because, I welcome that conversation because it's not about, it's so funny because it's not even about being right. It's not about being right to me. You could be like, nah, you know what, you're wrong. And I'm like, cool, I'm wrong. But I think the importance is locating these resonances And what are these identity markers and how can they be broadened? Yeah. So shout out my Latinos, shout out my Chicanas, you know? Like, yeah, they still, my mother is a proud Chicana, you know? Like, I'm not mad about anybody. I only get mad when fools like hop on to like social media and stuff and they're like, oh, Latinx is a slur. And it's like, is it? It's like, honey, your relationship with identity begins and ends with a checkbox. Like, you can just calm down. You can log out of Twitter for the day. Yeah, I could talk forever about this. So I'm going to shut up now. Thank you. Do you want to? We don't have the instrument. Do you want to do the? I mean, my voice is also very dry.
Could we agree to a musical gathering in the future?
That's that private investigation negotiation right there. Woo. Thanks,
you.
everybody. And once we turn off the cameras, we'll say, no, I'm kidding.